So welcome everybody to the Talis Aspire product update for March 2023. My name is David Renfrey, and for those of you that don't know me, I am the Senior Customer Success Consultant here within Technology for Sage, supporting Talis Aspire. I am also joined on today's webinar by our Head of Product, Scott Gibbons, who some of you will have spoken to either in person or via research calls, and he will be saying a few words about some work we've got upcoming later on in the webinar. For those of you who haven't attended before, this is basically our chance to update you on things that we've been working on within Talis Aspire, so new features that are in the system. It's also a chance to update you on things that we're planning for the next few months. And it also gives you an opportunity to ask any questions about any of the features that we will be talking about today. So if you can drop questions in the chat as you go, Scott will be monitoring those while I'm speaking, and then vice versa. And we will look to reply to all of those towards the end of the session. So, your agenda for today's webinar. As usual, we will start by looking at some of the recent releases that we've made. So that will be new features that we've added to the system since we last spoke to you. And I think it was 4 weeks ago, last month, we did a product update webinar for you. We will then move on to upcoming releases. So again, things that we have planned for the next few weeks or moving into Q2 of this year. So the sort of April to June period. We'll be talking a little bit about the work we're planning on doing around the reviews area of Talis Aspire over the next few months. And that's when I'm going to step back and allow Scott to speak for a few minutes to update you on what we're doing. And then we will finish with the latest on the Google Analytics 4 upgrade, which we've talked about a couple of times, and just be giving you the latest on where we are at with the work around that. So, first item on the agenda is the recent releases that we've made within Talis Aspire. So if any of you are signed up to the service announcements list, you'll hopefully already be aware of some of these, because we do a product release notice whenever there is a sort of new big feature coming out that may impact on the workflows that you have. There are 3 features I want to cover here. I can tell you that since we've released all of these, and these have all happened since the last product update, we haven't had lots of feedback about any of them, and I'm taking that to be a good sign, because usually if there's a problem, people are very quick to tell us about it. So hopefully that's a good thing. But again, as I talk about these, if you've sort of had any experiences on how they've impacted in the way you're using the system, then do leave your comments in the chat, because we'd be very interested to read them. So the first one, and this was released about a week after we last spoke. For those of you who export your reviews, you will hopefully have noticed that now when you do that, there is an additional column that's been added to the exported CSV, and we are now including any comments that you may have made against an item when setting an outcome. So this is something that we've long been asked for. You've always been able to add a comment against any sort of item that you're reviewing, but previously when the review was exported, that detail wasn't actually included. And so a lot of libraries told us, you know, they needed to refer back to the review itself once they'd done the export to actually get the sort of context for why that particular outcome had been set. So there's no need to sort of have the CSV open and then the review open in another tab. We do know that libraries export reviews for any number of reasons. It might be for internal analysis within your library workflows. It might be something that you want to share with the faculty member who's requested the review so that they can get a line-by-line breakdown on the actions you've taken against the resources they would like you to look at. So hopefully this is going to allow for more granularity within your reviews process. Yeah, as I say, we've not had much in the way of feedback on it since it's been released, but if you have found other ways to use this in your workflows or you have a question about how it works, then do just drop it into the chat and we'll take a look a little bit later. The second release we've made since we last spoke, again, this is a feature that's been long requested by customers, and again, it's something that relates to the reviews process. So as you'll all know, When a faculty member creates a list, they have the ability to leave either a student note or a library note against any item in the list. And when the list is then sent for review, those notes are then surfaced in the reviews interface, or just where my mouse is hovering at the moment. Again, some institutions we work with have workflows which actually entail library staff editing these notes. So in some cases, it might be that you use them to have a conversation with the faculty member, or it might be that you've needed to make a correction to an addition and you need to update the note for the students so that they understand what this item relates to. And again, the feedback we had previously was that, well, if we do need to edit those notes, currently we need to open up the list in another tab, and we then need to navigate to that item and make our edits there. And wouldn't it be better if we could just do that within the reviews area without needing to go onto another screen? Well, now you can. So this was released a couple of weeks ago, and it just gives you that ability to edit a note for the library or for the student directly within the reviews interface. Having said we haven't had much feedback, we did have one query around this at the point it was released, where one library wanted to clarify with us, if we make edits to these, how does this impact on the live list, and does it actually republish the list? And the answer to that question is no. So if you make an update to these notes, that's not going to republish a list and trigger a fresh review process.
Just a quick note in the chat, David.
Yep.
CJ is saying most reviews there have been done by mid-10 January, so they don't really get back into reviews until April and May. So hopefully, CJ, when you do get back into doing reviews April and May, you'll find this feature useful at that point.
Okay, and I can see a smiley face on that comment. So hopefully, CJ, this gives you a chance to have a play with it as well and just sort of familiarize yourself with the workflows. But yeah, it's live now, and hopefully people are going to be finding it useful. And the third one, which we trailed at the beginning of this week. So there is now a Safari browser extension available from the Apple App Store for users of Macs if they want to bookmark using Safari with Talis Aspire. So we're really pleased to offer this because it's been historically quite difficult for us to actually get ourselves into the App Store. It's something that Apple is quite protective of, but it's now available. So all you need to do, you go to the Apple Store, you search for Talis Aspire, and you add it to your browser in the normal way. Just to reiterate, we are now increasingly encouraging people to use the browser extensions rather than the bookmarklet that's available in Talis Aspire. And we have gone over the reasons before, but briefly, it's because a lot of websites now use a thing called content security policy. And the effect of that is that when you use the bookmarklet, which was something you used to drag into your browser directly from Talis Aspire, it's no longer able to interact with those pages because it's JavaScript and it's blocked. So the reason we developed the extensions is so that when a user now visits one of those pages, the extension gets around that issue and you can bookmark from there in the normal way. You've probably noticed that if users go to the My Bookmarks page now, we're actually recommending that they download the extension as default, and there is a short film on the Talis Aspire interface of demonstrating how to do that. But yeah, we've now got one for Safari as well. So this complements the extensions that we already had for Edge, for Google Chrome, and for Firefox. And actually, we know from our logs that the number of Safari users that use Talis Aspire, it's actually only quite a small percentage of people that use the system. But still, we do look to support all of our users. And so it's great to be able to support, whatever our users' preferred setup is going to be. There's another question. Yeah.
Another question, yeah.
Is there any detail we can get to see how many users are using which browser extension? What a good question.
I think we can see what browser people are using. I think we can get that detail. I'm not sure about what browser extension they're using.
Yeah. Yeah, Scott's right. I mean, you can from your Google Analytics, you can get details of which browsers people are using. On the extensions themselves, I don't think so, CJ, but it's a very good question, and I will take it away. And if we can provide any more detail on that, then I'm happy to supply it when we send round the recording. But yeah, it's an excellent question. So in terms of upcoming releases, so that's sort of 3 good news stories for the last month, which obviously we're very pleased about. There is also some work we'll be doing over the next sort of quarter or so April, May, June. The first thing we need to talk about is LTI 1.3. So those of you that have attended these before, particularly if you attended any webinars around this time last year, will know that we were talking a lot about LTI 1.3 and getting it implemented and some of the benefits it would bring for universities who integrate their lists with their learning management system. We have actually had to return to this over the last few weeks because well, as it says on the slide, essentially we're doing a little bit of additional work with LTI 1.3 at the moment to ensure that all known scenarios are catered for, because as you probably know, there are a number of different ways you can choose to roll lists over in Talis Aspire. And so from some testing we've done, we've sort of realized there's a couple of areas where we need to do a little bit of additional development just to make sure that whatever your scenario is, that rollover should go through smoothly. So it means us updating a little bit of logic within the system. This work should be completed by late April, but obviously if there is any sort of delay in that process, we will be reaching out to let people know. This does only affect you if you're already on LTI 1.3, and I believe that most of the institutions who are attending this call today should be on LTI 1.3 already. It would be interesting to hear your rollover plans if you're intending on doing one anytime soon. And I will return to that subject at the end of this webinar because there's something I'd like to ask you all. In addition, if you are using Blackboard, Blackboard have actually implemented the LTI 1.3 spec a little differently to how we might have expected, which means there's some work on our end to address that. I think really the takeaway from this at the moment is this is what we're doing at the moment. But if you are planning any sort of rollover anytime over the next few weeks, our advice would be to raise a support ticket, talk it through with us, and if necessary, we can jump on a call with you with our consulting team. But that's something that we're working on at the moment. Other things we are planning for the next few months, we would have flagged some of these on the last webinar, but you know, we're a month on, we're getting closer to actually working on some of these now. The things that we've actually got listed on this slide at the moment, they're actually listed in the order that we're planning on tackling these. So as I say, at the moment, we're doing some work on LTI 1.3. After that, the plan is to look at that add resource feature. So as you'll all know at the moment, when you're building a list, you click on add resource and that will allow a user to search through either things they have previously bookmarked, or they can do a wider search against Nielsen book data, and we will attempt to match results from there against your library catalogue. One of the bits of feedback we've had for a number of universities over the last couple of years is that what they would like to be able to do at the point when a user clicks on add resource, that rather than going to that Nielsen integration, they would like users to be able to search your own library's holdings directly. So when you're doing a search, the results will be coming back directly from your discovery layer, ensuring, you know, that the material that they see should all be available in your library. So this is something where, well, Scott, have we started development already, or is it imminent?
We've started the very first bits of development. We will be reaching out to people soon because we want to make sure that when we implement this, it works for all different systems. So we will be reaching out to people asking if they can, if people are willing to share some credentials so we can test on their local systems to make sure it works. But our initial testing is going well. And yes, we are planning to release this. It will be later in the quarter. It's probably going to be June, but it's definitely on track.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, the initial integrations we'll be looking at doing will be with Primo, with OCLC WorldCat, and with EDS. So those are the ones we'll be looking to support in the first instance. By the way, I can just see there's another question from CJ. We're hoping to move over to LTI 1.3 soon. Should we wait until this new update? Again, CJ, I think advice would be raise a ticket, let us know when you're planning a rollover and when you're hoping to install, because depending on the learning management system you're using and exactly when you're planning on rolling over, the advice may differ. So yeah, I would ask you to raise a ticket and we'll talk through the scenario for you. We will be doing some more accessibility work. So again, this is something that we did last year. We did a lot of accessibility work to ensure the system is compatible with screen readers and what have you. We will be returning to this theme over the next few months. And again, I think we might have mentioned this last month, but this came out of some feedback we'd had from a university who were looking at Talis Aspire, who have a full-time accessibility specialist who gave us, we're delighted to say, a very good report, but they also highlighted a few areas where they thought perhaps we could make some small improvements. So having received that really nice feedback, we thought it made sense to sort of, pick up the suggestions they'd made, and we will be making some improvements to accessibility over the next few months. And as ever, all of this is tracked on our VPAT, which is available from our support site. Moving on from that, we will be doing this work to make it, well, to give universities the option to set importance tags against each list item as mandatory. Again, as we would have said last month, we know that there are some universities who are very keen that importances should be made mandatory when faculty are building lists. We also know that there are other institutions who are adamant they do not want this feature. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be making it an option so that if you are a university that wants your teaching staff to mark importances against every list item, you have the ability to do that. And there is also another point on there, continuous improvement. Again, as we've sort of mentioned on previous webinars, there is always an ongoing program of continuous improvement, and that might be small bug fixes. It might be smaller new features. Somebody has made a request for something and it turns out that it's actually very easy for us to implement. And as ever, as and when those sort of smaller stories are released, if there is something that's relevant to this webinar, we will be talking about it on here. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the open access bookmarking that we've mentioned previously. So we now have 4 expressions of interest in this. And again, just to reiterate what it is a workflow we've been working on where when a user bookmarks an item from around the web, at the point of bookmarking, we are able to surface whether or not there is an open access version of that item available. And we do that by tapping into a lean library knowledge base, which is composed of data from Unpayable, but also a few other sources. And so what happens at that point is when the user bookmarks, we give them the choice of whether they would link to an open access version instead. And again, this is one of these things that people have been asking us for a while. They would like to make it easier to surface open access content within Talis Aspire. As I say, we've had 4 expressions of interest so far. This is only a beta at the moment, but if this is something you would be interested in trialing on your tenancy, again, if you raise a ticket with us, we can share a bit of more detail with you about how the integration works. We can look to switch it on for you at an agreed date, and we would likely want to speak to you a few weeks later to get your feedback. What did you like about it? Where do you think there could be improvements to be made? So yeah, if you're interested, do raise a ticket. Okay, the next item on the agenda was reviews discovery. So I will move on to the next slide, but then I will stop talking for a moment. And Scott, I don't know if you want to sort of outline to people what we're planning on doing here.
Yes, thanks, David. So we're looking at the whole reviews and acquisitions part of Talis Aspire. We've had a lot of feedback about that area and people ways they'd like to see improvements on it. So we're going to actually do a deep dive on that with the product team, discovery, beginning after Easter, so week beginning 17th of April. And what we're saying is we'd like, if you're interested, raise a ticket with David. And what be involved is around about an hour, we would sit down and talk with you about some of the things we're planning to do on the review section and ask for what you would like to see in reviews, how reviews would work better for you. So that's the whole, you push your push items into reviews, what happens from that point with reviewing lists, reviewing items, and making acquisitions as well at that point. So it's slightly widening it from just reviews to reviews and acquisitions. And really, we want your feedback. So when we work on that feature and do a big piece of work on it, it really does meet your needs. That's likely to take place in April and May. So if you do have time in the next couple of months or so, please let us know. And it's going to be developed, all going well, in Q3 this year. So we go, Q2 is up to the end of June. So then July through to September will be Q3, when we'll look to revamp, all going well, the reviews and acquisitions features. It may come in phases. There may be a couple of phases of that, because depending how much work it is, but that's certainly the plan. Your meetings probably with myself and one other member of the product team, and possibly one of our UX team as well. And just raise a ticket with support if you'd like to participate in that.
Brilliant, thanks, Scott. And just to add to that, one of the points I've got there is flexibility in moving to new features, because I know we talked about this last week when we were putting the slides together. Obviously, some of you will have reviews embedded deeply within your workflows. We don't want to take that away from you instantly. So what we will likely do is, well, when we develop the sort of new reviews area, there won't be a date when you all have to switch over. We will look to be flexible about that, so you can have a look at it, you can have a play with it before you actually set it live on your tenancy, so that there is some flexibility in there. Because obviously, if you're in the middle of a period of heavy reviewing, you don't suddenly want to be getting to grips with a new interface. So we will offer you some flexibility around that. And Scott, you mentioned a new team member there as well. Do you want to just?
Yep. So we've been interviewing for a new product manager to join the Talis Aspire team. Not much more I can say at the moment, except we have got a new person, but it's not been announced internally who that is yet. So we'll be announcing internally and then let everyone else know. But she will be joining us on the 17th of April, so just a few weeks, and we'll have a bit more capacity in our product team as well, so we can drive forward these developments.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, David.
The only other thing that's on the agenda was this Google Analytics work. So again, we've talked about this in a couple of previous product update webinars. For those of you that aren't familiar, Google will be retiring Universal Analytics on July the 1st. And as I'm sure you all know, each of our Talis Aspire tenancies has a Google Analytics property attached to it. And currently, like many people, we are using Universal Analytics. So yeah, we talked a bit about it last month. We have been working with a couple of universities here in the UK to get their feedback on what they would find useful, to see what features Google Analytics 4 has, perhaps what advantages it might offer over the current Universal Analytics offering. There will be a form sent out via the service announcements list before the end of this week, and it's going to be quite a simple form. And we will be asking one person from each institution to complete that and send it back to us. Essentially, what we are doing, we are taking this as an opportunity just to review who has access to Google Analytics for each institution. And the reason we're doing that is because we've had some universities who have been with us for a number of years. A couple of people have moved on. They never thought to tell us, so perhaps their email is still attached to the Google Analytics instance, even if they can't log into that email anymore. So we will be sending out a form just asking each institution to consider who actually needs access to Google Analytics going forward. And then we will be collating those, and those are the people that will have access to the Google Analytics 4 properties that we've currently been setting up. And then, as it says on the slide, there will be some training materials and probably a webinar to follow where we actually look at the possibilities that are available within Google Analytics 4. Because as we've previously said, it's probably not going to be possible to directly port over the existing dashboards we have set up in Universal Analytics. So that will be your opportunity to have a look at the possibilities that are out there and how you might want to manage those going forwards. So that was it for the agenda. We will take some questions at the end in a moment. While you're thinking about your questions, just a couple of slides to work through. In terms of upcoming webinars, we will not be doing a product update webinar next month for April. And the reason for that is because the last week in April is our Talis Insight event here in the UK. My apologies, it's technology from Sage Insight now, force a habit there. For the end of April. So basically, a lot of us are very busy with that around the week when we would usually be delivering a product update webinar. So there will be no product update webinar next month, but it will be returning in May. There's also a webinar there on the 10th of May, and I was going to ask people on this call about this. So every year in the UK, we do a webinar on rolling over Talis Aspire. And the reason we do that is because it's a process that almost all of our UK users go through every year. There are a number of different ways you can roll over Talis Aspire and different considerations to think about, depending on whether you use digitizations or not, depending whether you're using full year time periods or just semester time periods. So it's something we do every year just to remind people of the options that are available to them. Or perhaps if you're somebody that's joined a university in the 12 months since rollover was last done, it's your chance to learn about how the process works. We're going to be offering that to UK users as usual on the 10th of May. One of the things I was keen to ask people on this call, and do put your answers in the chat, is whether you would like a session like that for North America. And the reason I ask is because obviously we have a smaller number of users in North America at the moment, and it's become sort of quite clear from talking to you all that there are a number of different rollover strategies in use already within the small sort of user base that we have within Canada and the US. So I'm quite happy to provide a webinar on that topic on the 10th of May. You know, we'll just repeat the UK one. But if you think you would benefit from a different approach, or perhaps a more sort of discussion-based forum rather than me just presenting information, I would be happy to hear your thoughts on that. So do drop them in the chat, and we're certainly happy to offer something around rollover around that time. There is also a question from CJ. Is there a list I could access of all North American institutions that have Talis Aspire? It would be nice to have a discussion group, so that would help. CJ, that is certainly something we could put together for you. There is also, Julie would like a discussion-based forum. Elizabeth says May is premature for us. We will not roll over until August. Yeah, Elizabeth, that's totally fair. In the UK, rollover season, as we call it, can take place anytime from May until August. And so the reason that we do it in May is to hopefully catch everybody before they actually go through it. But okay, a couple of mentions for a possible discussion group. So that's interesting. And just your usual reminder before we get to any questions and throw the floor open. So there are a number of ways you can stay up to date with what we do. We do have the Talis Aspire newsletter, which is sent out once a month, which covers things like, you know, what we've been working on, case studies, list of the month, that kind of thing. So hopefully all of you have received that. We have the Talis blog, where you can see details of things that we've been working on or interesting case studies that we've come across while talking to institutions we work with. I've just mentioned upcoming webinars. So as I say, I'm quite happy to do something for rollover for May for North America, but what form that takes, I'm almost happy to be guided by you guys, and then we will work to put something together that meets your needs. And yeah, all of our webinars are recorded and are available on our support site, which is where you can also find details of new releases or anything about the system at all. As usual, we've left plenty of time for questions. So if anybody would like to ask anything about what we've covered today, if you just want to drop them into the chat, we'll continue monitoring that for another minute or two. No questions, but a thank you. You're welcome, CJ. Sean, you have a quick rollover question. Yeah. Okay, the question is, when a rollover fails, is there a record of why it failed? It's a good question. So I'm glad to say they don't usually fail, but if I'm assuming this is lists and not digitizations, but correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. Every rollover that takes place within Talis Aspire is assigned a unique job ID. So when you do a rollover within the system, if you do have any sort of failure, if you go into the review jobs menu within the Talis Aspire interface, click on view details, you will see a little pop-up there. One of them says, it says key. I'm trying to see the screen in my head, but it says key or unique job ID or something like that. It'll be quite obvious to you when you open up the screen. If you could raise a ticket, copy and paste that unique job ID into the ticket and send it to us, that is something we can share with the development team, and then they can take a look at that job ID and investigate where the problem might have been. So that's on the reading list side of things. If you have an issue with rolling over in the digitization area, again, we would sort of ask you, okay, well, give us the details of the request numbers of the items that didn't work, raise a support ticket with us, and we can take a look at it for you. I've got a feeling there's a story behind those questions, so we'll look out for the ticket and we'll investigate for you. Okay, did anyone else have any questions today? Okay, I am going to take silence as golden. So I guess it just remains for us to say thank you for your time today. Hope you found it useful. As I said, there will not be a product update webinar in April because we here in the UK will be busy with our Technology from Sage Insight event, but we will be back at the end of May. And yeah, when the recording is sent out, I'm also going to be asking you for feedback on what sort of session you would like to have around rollover in May, and then we will look to build something that works for you all. So yeah, thanks for your time today and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.